Hi, I'm April. I'm a singer-songwriter and music teacher, and today I'm going to give you 5 things to avoid when you write a song. And if you enjoy this video, make sure to give it a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss anything in the future. So the first thing to avoid when you are writing a song is a gumshoe moment. A gumshoe moment in real life is when you are walking along at a reasonable pace and you step in gum, and then no matter what you do for the next however long you're walking, you can't get that piece of gum off of your shoe. So now think of that, but in song form. So when you're listening to a song and everything is kind of going along, and then there's one lyric or one idea that kind of stops you in your tracks, and then you can't really focus on the rest of the song because you're so hung up on that one line. For me personally, the biggest gumshoe moment I can think of is in the song Jack and Diane, when he uses the phrase, sucking on chili dogs. It's the worst for me, and I cringe every time I hear it, and it totally ruins the rest of the song, which is really unfortunate because it's a great song other than that. So you might find that you totally love Jack and Diane, and that lyric doesn't bother you at all. And that's okay. Since gumshoe moments are such a subjective thing, you really can't be sure what is going to bother people, what is going to impress people, what people are going to think. So really be thinking about your own vision for your song. And the biggest thing here is to make sure that the images you're using fit with the rest of the song. If you're writing lyrics that can stand on their own, but don't necessarily work with the other images you're conjuring, you might have a gumshoe moment. For instance, if you're writing a song in which your metaphor is sunflowers, maybe that's not the moment to reference Night of the Living Dead. The same thing goes for sonic connection. So which syllables in your words sound like other syllables? For instance, if you are using a lot of S's in your lyric, stunned Sally sang songs about seashells. Your listener might find that those S's start to get a little bit grating on their nerves, and they might not want to continue listening to your song. While alliteration is awesome, sometimes too much of a good thing can go a little overboard. So maybe try dialing back on those S's a little bit so that you don't overwhelm your listener with sounds that they might not want to hear repeated over and over. Number 2 is changing the tense or pronouns throughout the song. This really only becomes a problem when it is confusing. So when your listener isn't really sure who is speaking to whom and where or when they are. When you're writing your song, go ahead and do a W check, right? Think about the who, what, when, where, why of your song, and make sure that those things line up throughout. As with everything on this list, this is not a hard and fast rule, but you should be thinking in terms of why you are using a different pronoun or a different tense. Is there a reason for it? Because if you do have a reason for it, then you can totally bend the rules a little bit. For instance, in Haruki Murakami's Kafka on the Shore, there is this brilliant paragraph toward the end of the book, and it has spoilers in it, so I'm not going to tell you which one. You'll just have to read it yourself. But there is this awesome paragraph that starts in third person past tense, and throughout the course of the paragraph, over like 4 sentences, it changes until it's second and present, which is the wildest thing, but he actually managed to make it work in this really beautiful way. And it basically takes you as the reader from kind of a backseat sidelines perspective and brings you right into the action so that it feels like the story is talking about you and centered around you. Number 3 is using personal information about real people in your music. Now, this is not to say that you should not be writing songs about your life. You totally can, and I think it's a really great thing to do. However, it is so important that you do not drag people into your music. And if you do, maybe ask them before releasing it to the world. You can always write a love song about your significant other and maybe use their first name, but maybe don't add their social security number. And on the flip side, definitely do not use the name of a person who you're mad at or upset with in your song, because that's just hurtful and that puts a lot of bad into the world, and we don't need that. Here I am, laid bare at the end of broke up with me over the revealing nature of the songs. I will note that her name is not actually Molly Connolly. Number 4, difficult notes for your singer to hit. So maybe I'm biased because as a singer, this is something I have to deal with all the time. But you should be paying attention to the range of the person singing the songs you are writing. So if you are writing for yourself, that is perfect because it means that you get to experiment with your own voice as you're playing, which means that you get to basically craft the song around your own voice. Now keep in mind that your voice will not always be the same. On some days it'll sound higher, on some days it'll sound lower, on some days you're gonna be able to hit that crazy whistle tone, and on other days you are not gonna want to go there. So just keep in mind your good days and bad days might make for different sounds. If you are writing for someone else, take a little bit of time to talk with them about their voice. Figure out what their lowest notes are, figure out what their highest notes are, and especially figure out where they feel the most comfortable. If you're talking to someone who has like a Whitney Houston style voice, go ahead and write them some crazy notes because that might be something that they feel comfortable with. But make sure that you check in with them first and make sure that that feels like something that is going to be good sounding every time they perform. The other thing about writing for someone else's voice is that you want to keep in mind what part of their voice that they use. If your song is meant to be a belty power ballad, you probably wouldn't get someone like Kristen Chenoweth to sing it. From the other side. But if your song is supposed to be musical theater-y and is supposed to use a lot of head voice, you probably wouldn't want Adele to be singing it. Now, both of those people have phenomenal voices, but they're not going to work for each other's genres. You really want to be thinking about what types of voices you are working with. Even people with the same range can sound a lot better in specific genres. The fifth and final thing to avoid when you're writing a song is stopping. So even if you don't really love whatever it is that you wrote, or even if you are stuck and really can't think of the words to start that second verse, try to push through it anyway. Try to find something that can go there, even if it's not perfect. That way, when you come back to it for editing, you can really put the work in to make sure that it sounds its best. Whereas if you don't finish, there's a really good chance that it's just going to sit there as half a song. There's this really common thing that happens to songwriters, which is that when we get about halfway through the song and totally forget about the song, coming back to it can feel especially difficult because we're so used to the way the beginning of it sounds. It has looped through our heads a million times and we're so familiar with it, but nothing is going to sound as familiar and as comfortable as that first part that you already wrote so long ago. So if you finish everything in one sitting, it's totally okay to go back and edit those things. And in fact, you kind of should go back and edit things because then you'll make sure that your song can be the best it can be. Just do your best to get through the song and to write the whole thing if you have the time for it. And if it is a song that you really don't like when you're finished, you've just gotten practice at writing a full song, which is so much better than practicing writing a fragment of a song over and over and over. So those were my 5 things to avoid when writing a song. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please do give it a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any videos in the future.